Today's story is about one of the most well-loved and well-known deities in all of yoga. If you've practiced yoga even just a little bit, then you've probably heard of Lord Ganesh. Lord Ganesh is often known as the remover of obstacles and as the deity that presides over yoga. And there's a whole bunch of really awesome stories that go along with Ganesh. But today's story is going to focus around how he got his name, how he became known as the remover of obstacles. So, the story starts with the longing of a mother and a father. And these two are Shiva and Parvati. Shiva is the third part of the triumvirate energies that has to do with creating life through destruction. He's a pretty incredible deity in and of himself, and I'm sure we'll have some stories about him. His wife, Parvati, is a beautiful and heroic and committed deity who we'll definitely have some stories about. So Shiva and Parvati wanted some sons. And the way that they came about children is a story in and of itself for another one of these. But let's just say that Shiva and Parvati had two sons, an older son named Guha, amongst many of his names, and then a younger son named Ganesh. So Guha, as this older son, was born into the world in order to defeat demons. So he has this incredible warrior's body. He rides the best steed possible. He's super strong and he's super fearless. A person actually that Ganesh looked up to. Because Ganesh, and you'll hear about it in his creation stories sometime, he used to be that kind of warrior. But through fate, through different actions, his whole body and his whole demeanor changed. Ganesh, the younger son, has the body of a man, the head of an elephant, and his steed that he rides is a mouse. And so Ganesh has spent a bunch of time in his life devoting himself to his studies and to scriptures, to the Vedas. He became a bit of a Brahmin, a bit of a priest in his own time, in his own right. So, in Indian tradition, you marry the older son first. The family was sitting around one day and Parvati was like, you know what, I love both of you so much the same that I can't just decide to marry the first son off. So instead I'm going to pose a challenge to you guys. And whoever completes the challenge first, well, he's the son that I'll marry off first. So they anxiously awaited for their mother's challenge. And Parvati took a deep breath in, deep breath out, and said, okay, whichever one of my sons can go around the world first, make it back to me and Shiva, I will marry that son off first. Well, Guha immediately jumped up and was like, I've got this. I have the fastest steed in the world, and I am fearless. I can face any armies. And he ran out to the stables, grabbed his horse, and took off on his mother's challenge. Ganesh just sat there, feeling really defeated. For the first time in a long time, he looked down at his body and looked over at his little steed, his mouse, and just took a deep sigh and said, I think that this isn't going to work for me. This is a really unfair challenge. My body can't do what my brother can do. So, lamenting his body, he went down to the river, and he sat quiet and still by the river for quite some time. And he slipped back into what's familiar to him, meditation. He sat there meditating on the banks of the Ganga, asking for guidance, asking for help. Because he knew his mother wouldn't just give him a challenge that he just couldn't do, but he just couldn't see his way through this obstacle. So he sat in stillness, inviting whatever the universe wanted to bring in as far as insight and knowledge, wisdom, to be able to beat his brother in this challenge. After quite some time, a slow smile spread across Ganesh's face. He rubbed his palms together and he put them over his elephant eyes and he opened his eyes into the warmth and he felt welcomed again. He felt good back in his body. And he had a solution. So he walked up to the pavilion where Shiva and Parvati were and he asked them to leave for a little bit. And then he brought in all of these beautiful things like flowers and vases and milk and rice and honey and ghee and incense. And he created this beautiful circle out of all of these offerings. And then he paraded his mother and father in, and he had them sit down right in the center of the circle. He then looked at his mother and father, and he bowed, And then he walked around the circle really slowly, with a lot of reverence, 7 times. At the end of his 7th revolution, he sat down in front of his mother and father, bowed to them again, and said, "Mother, I've completed your challenge. I would like for you to marry me first." And Parvati just burst into laughter. She was like, "But son, I asked you to go around the world." And Shiva just kind of sat back chuckling in his knowing manner. And he said, "Ganesh, explain to us. How did you go around the world?" Ganesh smiled, bowed again, and said, "Mother, father, I am a student of the scriptures, of the Vedas. And buried within the Vedas, it says, your mother and your father are not just your world, they are your whole universe. And I have now walked around you not once, but 7 times. Please marry me first." And Parvati just exploded into joy and bliss and hugged her son and said, "Oh, I knew it. I knew you could find your way around this obstacle. All you had to do was look inside. All you had to do was sit and open and get past everything that you felt like was keeping you from being able to do this." So, moral of the story? Ganesh isn't there to just stomp out obstacles, as is so widely believed. He doesn't just come in and remove them, swipe them away. What Ganesh does is he comes in and he gives us the wisdom, the knowledge, the energy, the motivation to sit silently, to sit with ourselves, to look at what all of our fears are around our obstacle, and then find our strengths, and use our strengths to step into the light and move past our obstacle. So the question for you today, what strength do you have that could move you past an obstacle that you fear you can't complete?